We made this quick video for anyone that wants to rig their base canopy into a skydiving container. If you're looking to improve your canopy control and accuracy, we highly recommend the skydiving environment. First, grab a container that'll fit your canopy. A couple of places to start are the local pro shop, school, rigging loft, or any crew jumpers that you see on the drop zone. Next, lay out your equipment as neatly as possible. Don't worry if you don't have a rigging loft, a packing mat will work just fine. We're going to start by putting the brake lines aside. We'll get to those later and focus on hooking up the canopy to the risers. Weighting down the risers can make them easier to work with. Connect each set of lines to the corresponding riser, passing the quick link through the slider. The quick link's orientation should be barrel facing in and tightening from bottom to top. Tighten the quick link by hand and fold the webbing in on itself so that it fits nicely into the quick link. The slider's orientation should be mesh side down with the slider gate facing the rear. Carefully maintain the orientation of the remaining line groups and the slider as we hook up the rest of the risers. Once we're satisfied that the canopy is hooked up properly, we're going to make sure that each quick link is tightened by hand and then given a quarter turn with a wrench. Neaten up the webbing and then maneuver the slider bumpers over the quick links. Next, we're going to thread the brake lines that we left off to the side through the slider and through the guide rings on the risers. In order to give ourselves the option of where to set our toggles, you'll notice that there is no loop at the bottom of the brake line. This is to allow us to customize our brake setting for our flying style and body type. Adjusting the toggle begins with measuring and marking where we'd like the toggle to sit on the brake line. Next, tie an overhand knot at that mark. Then, girth hitch the toggle by pushing a bight of line through the top of the grommet and around the back side of the toggle. Next, we're going to attach the risers to the container. If you're using squirrel risers, remove the key lock cables from the back of the riser. To make it easier to see, I'm going to connect the 3 rings facing up. If the risers are new, you can use a pull-up cord to aid in threading the Type 2A loop through the riser. Thread the excess cable through the lowest cable housing on the back of the riser. Since we're using base-specific risers, there is no attachment point for the RSL, and it'll have to be stowed away properly. To install slinks, carefully pass the slink through the line set and riser twice before girth hitching it to itself. Diagrams for this can be found on PD's website. Once the hookup is complete, we're going to run the lines to give it a continuity check. We're also going to continuity check the risers individually to make sure that each line is in its proper position. Next, we're going to find the main attachment point by tracing the tail pocket down the center seam until we find an anchored loop. Attach your pilot chute of choice, collapsible or non-collapsible, by girth hitching the attachment point. There are multiple brake settings on each brake line. For skydiving, we're going to use the shallowest setting, which is closest to the toggle. Stow the brake excess along with the toggle excess. Your base canopy is designed to open quickly. For this reason, we recommend you roll the nose and tail, as well as avoid long delays out of the aircraft. If we elect to jump the canopy without a deployment bag, we'll need to stow the lines into the tail pocket. To avoid dragging your container across the packing mat, place the container next to the canopy with the lines neatly sorted to one side. First, make a locking stow by rubber banding approximately a 3-inch bight of lines and tucking it away in the center of the tail pocket. Next, figure eight the remaining lines, making each figure eight smaller and closer to the opening. Once finished, fully mate the Velcro. Start at the bottom, making a channel for the lines to enter and exit. If we choose not to use a deployment bag, simply S-fold the canopy into the pack tray as neatly as possible. If we're closing our container with a base-specific bridle, use the pin closest to the pilot chute to close the container. Getting to know your parachute and how it flies is very important. One skydive on your base canopy is worth many base jumps. Practice object avoidance. Learn to turn your canopy quickly and precisely 90 degrees and 180 degrees with brakes stowed. Learn to fly your parachute backward using rear risers with brakes stowed. Learn to maintain a stable stall using risers with brakes stowed. Learn what rear riser turns feel like so you know how aggressively you can maneuver your parachute in the base environment. Practice deep brake approaches, hovering your parachute near stall, and sinking in landings. You can practice letting your parachute recover and then flaring, or flaring from half brakes, for example. Using the brakes, you should learn to fly your canopy backward. Learn to spin 180 and 360 degrees of rotation, and learn the difference between a spiral, which is a steep, fast rotation, and a spin, which is an asymmetric stall on the yaw axis. Practice object avoidance using the brakes. Immediately after opening, execute 90 and 180 degree turns using your brakes. Learn to stall your canopy with the brakes. Remember that there is a good moment and a bad moment to release your parachute from a stall. Releasing the stall while your canopy is still rocking back will result in a violent recovery surge. Releasing the stall while the parachute is closer to overhead will result in a gentler recovery surge. Learn how your parachute reacts to front riser input so that you can use front risers for your landing approaches in base. Flaring is a skill that needs to be developed with each unique parachute. This is where a perfectly set control toggle comes into play. You should be finishing your flare at the stall point of the canopy. You should be able to stall your canopy with full arm extension within 3 seconds. If you cannot, then your toggle setting is too long. Shorten it until stall is easily accessible with straight arms. Refine your approach and flare technique until you have the tools to take your canopy into the base environment. Our goal is to be able to land accurately and comfortably using both the toggles and risers.